You've written about tort law, and in tort studies, often the car accident is the classic example. Which driver is at fault? What's the proximate cause, etc. How does this shift when the driver is a software or some type of cloud-based artificial intelligence?
No, that's a great question. The short answer is that there's likely to be a shift in liability, at least according to theory, towards the vehicle manufacturer or the software developer and away from the individual driver.
Oh, that sounds like a sweat off the back of American drivers.
Well, I wouldn't be
sweat off the brow was the expression.
Sweat off the brow. I wouldn't be too sanguine too quickly. There's sort of a number of theoretical reasons to think there's likely to be this shift in liability, but there's lots of sort of real world practical reasons to think that any shift in liability is likely to take a long time and may never occur. The theoretical reasons to think there likely to be a shift in liability is partly just sort of commonsensical, right? Does it make sense to blame the driver when the driver's not doing the driving?
I mean, you could use the analogy of a taxi cab. If a cab hits another person, you're not suing the passenger, even though the driver is the agent of the passenger.
No, that's exactly right. And I mean, to sort of cover, torts in about 30 seconds, there's sort of three classical justifications for tort law. One is sort of economic deterrence, to try to deter dangerous activity. Second is civil recourse or corrective justice, sort of the idea of to create a mechanism to allow people to remedy wrongs. And then the third is compensation for the injured. And in all three, there's an argument that there should probably be a shift away from the human driver towards the manufacturer or the software.
Maybe you can walk through those three. So one seems pretty obvious. Why punish someone who had nothing to do with the accident? Or arguably.
Exactly right. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And there's I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but there's a sort of a theory of the economic analysis of tort law that says, well, what you really should do is put liability on the person who's the cheapest cost avoider. So the organization in this case. So does it make sense because what you're really trying to do is create incentives for efficient safety. And the idea is, does it make sense to put the incentives on the human driver?
How do you stimulate the market to create a safer car?
Exactly right. Or does it make sense in this case to what's the organization that's going to be more sensitive to those incentives? And frankly, even back in the early 70s or late 60s, there were some scholars that argued that actually the manufacturers should bear more of the liability so that they would design safer cars. Instead, the sort of conventional attribution,
if I'm driving the car and I ran over your yard gnome, then I'm to blame.
Exactly.
I tried to think of a less tragic example.
Less tragic example. Any attribution of causation for any crash is to some extent arbitrary, right? So any crash has a myriad number of causes. And we often simplify in our analysis, and particularly in the case of
what about
crashes.
my yard gnome?
Your gnome? Well, so, it's partly the road design, right? Where the location of the road was vis-a-vis the gnome. If that had been different, your gnome would be fine.
Maybe there should be more public land between individual yards.
Or again, while we're in the world of hypotheticals, if your car maxed out at 25 miles an hour, maybe you would have been less likely to lose control of it. So, or if it was surrounded by really thick bumpers.
Or if the visibility of the windows.
The visibility of the windows had been different. Again, it's easy to think of hypothetical other potential causes. Now, that doesn't mean that...
But you predict, a lot of scholars predict that with autonomous vehicles, the liability will start to shift. Who is it shifting to? Is it the software designer, the car manufacturer? Where does it go?
Well, it's a little unclear. And while there are lots of these sort of theoretical reasons to think it might shift, there's also a lot of real world reasons to think that shift might not occur. And that's has something to do with the way that the automobile law system works today. After I was in law school, I got into a minor fender bender, And I was called my insurance company and was like, all right, well, we can depose these 3 witnesses and we can subpoena the city for their records of this and that and the other thing, and we can figure out what the traffic light timing was. And the insurance person listened to me very politely, but said, well, why don't we just write you a check for the $200 of damage it cost?
And which actually seems like the smart thing to do there.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And the point is, though, that there's this vast disconnect between sort of tort law theory and the way, and all the panoply of the legal system, and the way that 99% of automobile crashes get resolved on a daily basis, which is if there is any kind of dispute, it's not worth anybody's effort, and it's not worth the money to find the theoretical possibility.
It's more like an actuarial
It's
decision.
it's very administrative, and it's sort of a rough justice kind of thing, and particularly for small dollar figures. And even when the insurance companies disagree, they don't usually take it to court. They have an arbitration facility that quickly decides. Again, it may be imperfect, but it works and it's quite efficient.